Roger Stone's indictment is raising new questions about the Trump campaign's pursuit of those Democratic emails hacked by the Russians in the lead up to the 2016 election. And some Trump aides say Stone's arrest is sparking new concerns about what else the special counsel might have uncovered.
This morning, Trump advisor Roger Stone is back home, preparing for the fight of his life. Late Friday, he made his case on cable news.
It's about silencing me. I intend to plead not guilty.
Stone slamming the special counsel's indictment, which accuses him of obstruction, lying, and witness tampering in the Russia investigation.
Many of these things in the indictment I have already addressed and rebutted. The idea that they need evidence, they've been in my email, my text messages, my phone calls for 2 years.
The 7 charges listed include lying to Congress about his efforts to uncover damaging emails hacked by the Russians from the Democrats in Hillary Clinton's campaign. It also includes this stunning detail that after the first WikiLeaks dump of hacked emails in July 2016, a senior Trump campaign official was directed to contact Stone about any additional releases. Roger Stone was defiant Friday after his federal court appearance in Fort Lauderdale, channeling his idol, Richard Nixon.
I believe this is a politically motivated investigation.
The self-described dirty trickster advised Mr. Trump for decades, including the early days of the 2016 presidential campaign.
I am one of his oldest friends. I am a fervent supporter of the president.
Just last month, Mr. Trump said Stone has guts for saying he'd never testify against the president. The White House now attempting to distance the two.
This has nothing to do with the president, has nothing to do with the White House.
Sanders didn't respond directly when asked whether it was Mr. Trump who told that campaign official to contact Stone about the hacked Democratic emails. Stone says he didn't coordinate with the president.
There is no proof here.
Roger Stone is now the 6th associate of President Trump indicted in the Mueller investigation.
And the president's former convicted campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was in court yesterday, too. In that separate case, prosecutors told the court that they didn't think Manafort should get any special credit when he's sentenced next month, since prosecutors allege that Manafort lied to federal investigators after he agreed to cooperate in the Russia investigation. Peter, Chanel?
Geoff Bennett outside the West Wing at the White House this morning. Geoff, thank you. We want to bring in Matthew Miller, an NBC News justice and security analyst and former Justice Department spokesman in the Obama administration. Matt, good morning to you.
Morning.
So these charges don't accuse Stone of directly colluding with Russians during the course of the campaign, but they certainly do bring Robert Mueller's investigation one step closer to the president's inner circle. How significant, and I guess perhaps more importantly, why is this indictment so significant?
Well, Peter, I think the most important thing to take away from this indictment is it does not yet allege criminal collusion between the Trump campaign on the one hand and the Russian government on the other, but it's the closest we've gotten yet to answering that question, which really has been at the heart of the investigation. It lays out a series of contacts between Roger Stone with WikiLeaks and then Roger Stone and the Trump campaign. And I think the biggest question going forward, is there more evidence the special counsel has that he's holding on until later? Is this all he has? Or is he still investigating and trying to answer that question?
Well, to kind of follow up on that, then one of the president's lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, says that this has nothing to do with the president. This has nothing to do with collusion, that it only has to deal with false statements. Is that a fair way to read it?
Well, two things about that. First of all, false statements are incredibly important, and a former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, which Rudy Giuliani is, should know that. They're at the heart of many criminal cases. Second, people often make false statements because they're trying to cover up an underlying crime, and that is as part of the allegation here is that Roger Stone was trying to cover up the behavior, his behavior and the behavior of others during the campaign. Now, what we don't know is, did he have conversations with the president during the campaign about this? The president has denied that. Roger Stone has denied that. But we know it's been reported that they were on the phone at multiple times during the fall of 2016 when the WikiLeaks dumps were going on.
Right.
And I think that question is central going forward to how far this conspiracy would go inside the Trump campaign.
Matt, one of the key lines that legal experts are pointing to this morning is the following. I'll put it up on screen so folks can read along this morning. It says a senior Trump campaign official was directed to contact Stone about additional releases from WikiLeaks about Hillary Clinton. There's only so many, I covered the campaign, only so many senior Trump campaign officials and only so many people who could direct a senior campaign official. Is this zeroing in on the president?
I think you're right, Peter. That is one of the most tantalizing details in this entire indictment. It is written very strangely. This passive voice use of someone was directed. Look, when you look at senior campaign officials who would naturally be in contact with Roger Stone, obviously Paul Manafort, the campaign manager, was his former business partner, goes back years. Rick Gates, the deputy campaign manager, would know him well. But then this use of the passive voice to say was directed, you know, usually you would see that written as senior campaign official 1 directs senior campaign official 2. The way that they kind of conceal that detail leads you to believe it's probably the President of the United States. We don't know that for sure, but it's a very odd use of kind of Justice Department terms and the way they write that indictment to keep that from the public, at least for now.
I mean, there's more to come. Matt Miller, thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you.